I have always believed that memory is an obedient thing. It waits where you leave it, untouched, patient. If someone had asked me a month ago what my grandmother's house looked like, I would have answered without hesitation. A narrow stone path, a porch that leaned ever so slightly to one side, windows too tall for the size of the rooms behind them, the old clock in the hallway. Simple things, solid things, the kind of details that survive because nothing ever asks them to change. I believed that. The journey back was longer than I remembered. Not in miles, in silence. The farther the train carried me from the city, the more I became aware of sounds disappearing one by one. Traffic vanished first, then voices. Then the distant hum that seems to exist everywhere people have forgotten how to be alone. By the time I stepped onto the empty platform, even the wind seemed reluctant to disturb the afternoon. There are places where silence feels peaceful. This was not one of them. It felt occupied, not by someone, by something I could not have named if my life had depended on it. Perhaps every old place collects a certain kind of quiet. Perhaps silence grows heavier when enough years settle inside the walls of a house. Or perhaps I noticed it only because I had spent too many years pretending I remembered this place. My mother never spoke about it. Whenever the house found its way into conversation, it happened by accident. And the subject dissolved before either of us realized it had appeared. As though language itself refused to remain there for very long. When she handed me the key, she held it for a second longer than necessary. "You won't need long," she said. It was impossible to tell whether she meant the work, or the house, or me. I almost asked her when she had last been there. Instead, I slipped the key into my pocket. Some questions feel dangerous long before anyone answers them. The key was colder than I expected. Not because it had been outside or because autumn had already begun to settle into the mornings. It carried a different kind of cold, one that lingered against my skin long after I slipped it into the lock. I remember noticing it only because I rubbed my thumb over the metal without thinking, hoping the warmth of my hand would erase the feeling. It didn't. The lock yielded with almost embarrassing ease. For years I had imagined the house resisting me somehow, a swollen door refusing to open. Rust, dust, the stubborn weight of abandoned things. Instead, the door moved inward as quietly as if someone had opened it from the other side. The air inside was still, not stale, simply undisturbed. There is a difference. Old buildings usually smell of damp plaster, forgotten fabric, wood that has slowly surrendered to time. This house smelled faintly of paper, beeswax, and rain, as though someone had opened the windows only a few hours before I arrived. I stood on the threshold longer than necessary. I cannot explain why. Nothing frightened me. And yet crossing that line felt oddly irreversible, as though the version of myself standing outside belonged to a world that had already begun to recede. I stepped in. The floor answered with a soft sigh beneath my weight. The hallway looked almost exactly as I had remembered it. Almost. Memory has a curious way of convincing us that certainty and familiarity are the same thing. They are not. Familiarity is comfortable. Certainty is dangerous. I knew where the staircase should be before I saw it. I knew there would be a narrow table beneath the window. I knew the faded runner stretched the length of the hallway, worn smooth by decades of footsteps. Everything was there. Every object occupied the place my memory had reserved for it. Yet I felt the unmistakable discomfort of arriving somewhere that had remembered me more accurately than I had remembered it. I left my suitcase beside the door and wandered slowly from room to room without any real purpose. The kitchen, the dining room, the small sitting room where my grandmother used to knit by the window whenever rain drifted across the garden. Or did she? I stopped. The thought had come and gone so quickly that I almost missed it. I could picture her sitting there, the gray cardigan, a basket of yarn beside the chair, a pair of reading glasses resting low on her nose. The image was complete, beautifully complete. But I could not remember a single conversation that had taken place in that room. Not one, only silence, as though someone had painted people into an empty photograph. I smiled to myself. Memory plays tricks. Everyone knows that. I opened another door. A narrow study. Shelves line the walls from floor to ceiling, each one crowded with books whose spines had surrendered their colors years ago. Dust should have covered everything. It hadn't. I ran one finger along the edge of a shelf, clean, not perfectly. Just enough that I noticed. I looked at my fingertip. Almost nothing. Strange. No one had lived here for nearly 3 years. Perhaps the solicitor had hired someone to clean before my arrival. It was the obvious explanation. The obvious explanation arrived a fraction too late. That was becoming a pattern. I found myself glancing over my shoulder more often than I cared to admit. Not because I expected someone to be there, because the house seemed unwilling to become empty. The feeling had no shape, no sound. It existed somewhere beneath thought, where instinct quietly arranges the world before reason catches up. Outside, clouds drifted across the afternoon sky. The light entering through the windows changed almost imperceptibly. For a moment, every room seemed softer, then ordinary again. I told myself I was tired. Grief does peculiar things to perception. Even delayed grief, especially delayed grief. There is guilt in returning to a place only after everyone who loved it is gone, as though absence itself were watching. I carried my suitcase upstairs. The staircase complained gently beneath each step, but the sounds were uneven, not random. Certain steps answered, others remained perfectly silent. Halfway up, I paused. I don't know what made me stop. There was no noise, no movement. Only the peculiar certainty that I had forgotten something downstairs. I stood there trying to remember. The front door? No. My coat? No. The suitcase was already in my hand. Nothing was missing, and still the feeling remained. Like reaching the end of a sentence and discovering one word had quietly disappeared. It passed. Slowly. Almost. almost reluctantly. The bedroom I had chosen overlooked the garden. The wallpaper had faded into colors that no longer had names. The bed stood exactly where it always had. The wardrobe leaned slightly toward the window, just enough that anyone else might have blamed the uneven floor. I opened the curtains. Beyond the glass, the garden seemed larger than it should have been. Not physically larger, merely farther away. The apple tree looked distant despite standing exactly where I remembered. The stone bird bath appeared lower than before. Perspective can shift strangely in old houses. I told myself, nothing more. The thought satisfied me for several seconds, long enough that I almost believed it. As evening settled over the fields, I unpacked only the essentials. A sweater, a notebook, 2 books I had no intention of reading. People bring books to lonely places because they are afraid of discovering they have nothing to distract themselves from. I made tea. The kettle took longer than expected to boil. While I waited, I wandered back into the hallway. The old clock still stood against the wall. I remembered it being taller, or perhaps I remembered being shorter. Its wooden case bore the fine scratches of generations of careless hands. The brass pendulum swung with slow, patient precision. Tick, tick, tick. I smiled without realizing it. Some sounds belong to childhood even when childhood itself refuses to return. I leaned closer. The face of the clock was simple, Roman numerals. Hairline cracks beneath the varnish, delicate black hands resting against yellowed enamel. They pointed to 4:10. I frowned. Odd. I could have sworn hours had already passed since I arrived. Without thinking, I checked my phone. No signal. 5:48. The clock continued ticking, steady, confident, unhurried. Still 4:10. It should have amused me. Old clocks stop all the time. Instead, I found myself listening. The pendulum never hesitated. The mechanism sounded healthy, alive. I reached toward the glass, intending to stop it. My hand froze a few centimeters away. Not because I was afraid, because another memory surfaced, small, insignificant. I was standing in this hallway as a child. Someone's hand rested gently on my shoulder. A voice, quiet enough that I could almost hear it. Never interrupt a clock that still believes it knows the time. I blinked. The memory dissolved immediately. Whose voice had that been? My grandfather? No, too soft. My grandmother? It didn't sound like her. My mother? Impossible. I searched for the memory again. Nothing. Only the sentence remained, detached from whoever had spoken it. I laughed under my breath. It was absurd. The mind invents things to fill empty spaces. Psychologists write entire books about it. I knew that. Knowing something and believing it are rarely the same experience. The tea began to whistle in the kitchen. I turned away from the clock. As I walked toward the doorway, I caught the faintest impression that the hallway had grown longer. Only by a step. Perhaps 2. I stopped. looked back. Everything appeared exactly as it should. The runner, the staircase, the umbrella stand, the clock. 4:10. I stood there for several seconds before quietly shaking my head. It occurred to me then that I had spent the better part of an afternoon questioning things so small that another person would never have noticed them. A clean bookshelf, an old clock, a feeling on a staircase. Nothing. Nothing at all. And yet, the house had already begun asking questions I could not remember hearing. I have tried many times to remember whether I slept that first night. The honest answer changes every time I ask it. There are mornings I am convinced I never closed my eyes. There are others when I remember dreams with impossible clarity, dreams that must have belonged to someone awake. Perhaps both are true, perhaps neither is. I have learned not to trust beginnings. They have a habit of rearranging themselves long after they are over. The room was darker when I woke, or when I believed I had woken. The distinction matters more than it should. For several seconds I remained still, listening. People often say silence has a sound. It doesn't. Silence is expectation. It waits without breathing. The house was waiting, not for me to move, for me to notice something. I did. The rain had stopped. I knew it before I opened my eyes because the air had changed. Rain leaves behind a certain softness, as though the world has forgotten its edges for a little while. That softness was gone. Everything felt sharply outlined. Even the darkness. I sat up slowly. The bedroom had acquired the unfamiliar appearance that every room possesses for a few moments after waking. A place suspended between recognition and invention. The wardrobe stood where it had always stood. The window faced the garden. The chair beside it remained empty. I knew these things before I looked. Then I looked anyway. The chair was empty. I remember feeling relieved, which is strange. Relief usually follows fear. I cannot remember being afraid. Not yet. The clock downstairs was still ticking. Its rhythm drifted through the floorboards with surprising clarity. Tick, tick, tick. It occurred to me that I had not once heard it strike the hour. That should have been impossible. I counted without realizing I was counting. 37 steps separated the bedroom from the hallway. No, 36. One of them was missing. You see, that sentence makes no sense. It didn't make sense then either. I reached the landing and immediately forgot why I had counted them. There was only the hallway, gray morning light, dust floating lazily through the air. The old runner stretched toward the staircase. Nothing unusual, and yet I stood perfectly still because something had changed. Not in the hallway. In me. I knew this place better than I had the evening before. Not because I had spent another night inside it. Because I recognized details I had never noticed. The tiny crack running beneath the third window pane. The faint water stain near the ceiling. The slight tilt of a painting that depicted a coastline I had never visited. Recognition arrived without memory. I cannot explain it any better than that. Imagine reading a book in a language you do not speak, and somehow already knowing what the next sentence means. That is how the hallway felt. Familiar beyond experience, I descended the stairs. 36 steps, or perhaps 37. The number refused to remain fixed. By the time I reached the kitchen, I had convinced myself I was simply tired. Travel, stress, grief. The mind dislikes uncertainty and will happily disguise it as exhaustion. I put water on to boil. The kettle complained quietly. I watched condensation gather on the window. Beyond the glass, the garden seemed untouched by the night. Not a single fallen branch. Not a leaf out of place. The stillness should have comforted me. Instead, it felt rehearsed, as though the world outside had paused just long enough for someone to adjust the scenery. That thought embarrassed me. I actually smiled. Isolation. That was all. One evening alone in an old house, and already imagination had begun entertaining itself. I remember thinking that. I also remember thinking it 2 days later. Perhaps I repeated the thought. Perhaps time did. While waiting for the kettle, I wandered into the study again. Morning light transformed the room completely. Books lined every wall, hundreds of them. Some leather-bound, others so faded their titles had disappeared. My grandfather had loved books. At least, I think he had. Isn't it remarkable how confidently we inherit stories about people? We repeat them until they resemble memories. I tried to picture him reading. The image refused to stay still. Each time I imagined his face, it seemed fractionally older, then younger, then turned away before I could see it clearly. As though memory had become self-conscious, I chose a random volume from the shelf. Its cover cracked softly in my hands. Blank, not empty. Blank, every page. Cream-colored paper. No words. I frowned. Odd. I checked another. Essays. Printed normally. Another. Poetry. Another. Blank. I laughed quietly. Someone must have used unused journals among the books. Perfectly ordinary. I replaced it, then stopped. Something about the shelf felt wrong. Not wrong, different. I looked again. There had been 4 blank books. Now I could only find 3. I searched the entire shelf. Nothing. It is embarrassing how much time I spent looking. Not because the missing book mattered, because I had become convinced there had been 4. Absolute certainty. The dangerous kind. When I finally gave up, I noticed sunlight touching the far wall. Only, there was no window there. I stared. The light remained. A pale rectangle resting against faded wallpaper. Soft. Perfectly still. The shape of a window. Without the window. Then a cloud crossed outside. The light disappeared. I walked across the room. Ran my fingers over the wall. Solid plaster. Cool beneath my hand. No hidden frame. No opening. Nothing. I almost convinced myself I had imagined it. almost. There is a peculiar loneliness in witnessing something you immediately begin arguing against. No one else needs to doubt you. You become sufficient company for that. I made tea. It tasted strangely familiar. Not because of the brand, because I remembered drinking it tomorrow. I set the cup down, very carefully. The sentence formed before I could stop it. I remembered drinking it tomorrow. I repeated it silently. Once, twice, waiting for the absurdity to reveal itself. It never did. Instead, another memory arrived. Not like a flash, not like a dream, simply a certainty. The cup would slip from my hand. It would shatter beside the table. Tea would spread across the floor in the shape of a crooked river. I would cut my left palm while picking up the pieces. I knew it, as certainly as I knew my own birthday. I looked at the cup, whole, warm, perfectly safe. Minutes passed. Nothing happened. Eventually, I laughed at myself, quietly, almost affectionately. You really are alone too long. Hearing my own voice helped. Reality often becomes firmer when spoken aloud. I reached for the cup. Nothing. I carried it into the hallway. Still nothing. The certainty began to dissolve. See, I thought. That's all it was. A strange thought, an anxious mind. By the staircase, I stopped again. Not because of the clock, because I suddenly remembered standing there tomorrow. The realization was so ordinary that it frightened me only afterward. I was not imagining the future. I was remembering it. There is an important difference. Imagination asks questions. Memory does not. Memory arrives already convinced. My fingers loosened. The porcelain slipped. For one impossible instant before gravity completed its work, I knew exactly what would happen next. Not because I was watching it, because I had already lived through it. The cup struck the wooden floor. The sound echoed through the hallway. White fragments scattered across the runner. Tea spread slowly between them. A crooked river. Without thinking, I knelt. One sharp edge caught my left palm. Not deeply, just enough. A single drop of blood landed beside the largest fragment. I watched it expand against the wood, dark, perfectly round. Then another thought entered my mind. Gentle, almost kind. Not my voice, not anyone's. Just a thought that seemed to have been waiting patiently for me to become quiet enough to hear it. No, you are remembering this correctly. It simply hasn't happened yet. I cleaned the blood before it had time to dry. That is how I remember it. Although, if I am honest, I also remember noticing the stain much later that evening, already darkened at the edges, as though I had forgotten about it for hours. Perhaps I had. Perhaps memory prefers the version in which we are more careful than we truly were. The cut itself was insignificant. A thin line crossing the base of my palm. By morning, it had already begun to close. Or perhaps it had always looked that way. I wrapped it in a strip of gauze anyway. Not because it hurt, because touching it made me uneasy. It felt like evidence. Evidence of what? I couldn't have said. The day unfolded quietly after that. Quietly, but not continuously. Looking back, I don't remember it as a sequence of hours. I remember islands. Small moments surrounded by water I can no longer cross. The study, the kitchen, the upstairs landing, the garden, each perfectly clear. Everything between them dissolved into a pale mist where cause and effect had somehow misplaced one another. I spent part of the afternoon opening windows. The air inside the house needed movement. Or perhaps I did. Outside, the sky had become the color of old silver. The light carried no warmth despite the season. Somewhere beyond the garden wall, unseen birds called to one another in brief, uncertain bursts, each sound swallowed almost immediately by the fields. The village remained invisible from the house. I found that strange. Surely there should have been another roof, a road, smoke rising from a chimney, anything. Instead, every window seemed to frame only distance, as though the house had been carefully placed just beyond the edge of ordinary geography. That thought made me smile. It sounded dramatic. The sort of sentence one writes years later, because it fits the story better than the truth. The truth was simpler. I felt isolated. The mind decorates isolation with mystery, because mystery is easier to endure. At least, that is what I believed then. I no longer know whether I was right. I wandered upstairs without deciding to. There are decisions we make so quietly that consciousness arrives only after the body has already obeyed them. Halfway along the corridor, I stopped. The wallpaper carried a pattern of climbing ivy, faded green, tiny white flowers. I traced one of the vines with my eyes. It ended abruptly near the ceiling. Not because the pattern was damaged, because it had been painted that way. A vine with no beginning, no end. It simply existed. For reasons I still cannot explain, I found that deeply unsettling. Not the pattern itself, its certainty. Someone had designed it deliberately. Someone had looked at that unfinished vine and decided it was complete. I reached the end of the corridor. The small room stood open. I don't remember opening the door. I have tried, repeatedly. Memory insists the room was simply waiting. Smaller than I expected. Almost square. One narrow window overlooking the orchard. A single wooden chair. Nothing hanging on the walls. Nothing stored in the corners. No hidden objects. No secrets. Only emptiness. I stood in the doorway for several seconds before stepping inside. The floor was warmer there. Not warm. Warmer. Just enough that I noticed. The sensation disappeared almost immediately. I crossed to the window. Outside, the orchard stretched toward the low stone wall marking the edge of the property. The trees were older than I remembered, or perhaps I had underestimated how much time had passed. Wind moved through the branches, slowly, without urgency. One apple fell. I watched it disappear into the grass. A perfectly ordinary thing. Then another followed. Then another. None of the branches moved. No breeze. No bird. Nothing disturbed them. 3 apples, falling one after another, as though obeying instructions I could not hear. I blinked. Only one remained beneath the tree. The others were gone. I closed my eyes, counted to 5, opened them again. 1 apple, exactly where it should have been. My reflection floated faintly in the glass. I looked tired, older than I had expected. There is a particular expression people wear when they have begun questioning themselves more often than the world around them.
I recognized it, not because I had seen it before, because I would. No, because I had. You see how difficult this becomes? Even now, writing these words, I hesitate over every tense, past, present, future. They once lived in separate rooms. Now they speak through the same wall. I sat in the chair without intending to, without thinking. The room seemed strangely indifferent to my presence. That was the first thing I noticed. Not welcoming, not hostile, indifferent. Like a place that had existed for so long, it no longer distinguished between visitors. My breathing slowed. I listened. Nothing. Not the clock downstairs. Not the wind, not the birds. The silence here differed from the silence elsewhere in the house. Downstairs, silence felt occupied. Here, it felt unfinished, as though sound itself had not arrived yet. I do not know how long I remained there. Minutes, perhaps an hour. Time behaves politely until someone begins watching it. Then it becomes self-conscious. I remember thinking about my grandmother. No, that isn't true. I remember thinking that I ought to think about my grandmother. There was an enormous difference. Grief had always arrived in me as absence rather than pain. I miss people the way one notices missing furniture, not constantly. Only when reaching for something that was no longer there. I tried to picture her face. Instead, I remembered something she had never said. The certainty of it startled me. You will spend your life believing memory belongs to the past. I frowned. She had never spoken those words. Had she? No, I would have remembered. Wouldn't I? The thought lingered, not as a sentence, as recognition, like hearing a melody before realizing you have known it since childhood. I stood. The room felt fractionally smaller than before, or perhaps I'd become aware of its boundaries. When I reached the doorway, I stopped. There had been one chair. I was certain of that. One window, one chair, nothing else. I looked back. There were 2 chairs, identical, facing one another. The second stood in the corner nearest the window. Simple oak, the wood slightly darker with age. I stared at it for a long time, not frightened, merely waiting for my mistake to reveal itself. I searched my memory. Had it been there all along? Of course. Surely. How could I have overlooked a chair? The explanation
explanation was so obvious that it should have ended the matter. Instead, another thought quietly settled beside it. If the chair had always been there, why had the room seemed complete without it? I stepped back inside, touched the second chair, cold, solid. Dust rested lightly across the seat, undisturbed. No one had sat there for years. Or perhaps someone had. The dust proved very little. Dust settles on forgotten things. It also settles on things no one notices. There is a difference.
I left the room without looking back again. At least, I think I did. There are moments I remember glancing over my shoulder from the corridor. The room empty. Only one chair. If that memory is true, then everything before it is impossible. If it isn't, I have no reason for remembering it so clearly. That evening, while writing a list of repairs in my notebook, I found a sentence already waiting halfway down the page. Not in different handwriting, not written in different ink. My handwriting, my pen. The same blue ink I had been using all afternoon. I knew I had never written it. I also knew that I would. The sentence was very short. It read, "Do not let the house convince you that remembering and returning are the same thing." I stared at it for a long time. Then, beneath it, without deciding to, I wrote 3 words. I already did. The moment the ink touched the paper, I became certain of something that made no sense whatsoever. I wasn't answering the sentence. I was answering someone who had not asked it yet. I stopped writing after that. Not because I had nothing left to say. Because I could no longer tell whether I was writing things down or remembering having written them. The notebook remained open on the table. The sentence waited. I already did. I must have read those 3 words 100 times. Each time they seemed to answer a different question. Outside, evening arrived without changing the light. The sky darkened. The room did not. I noticed it only because the window had become a mirror. My reflection stared back at me with the quiet patience of someone who had been there longer than I had. I raised my hand. She didn't. No, that isn't true. She did. Just later. Barely a second. Long enough for my stomach to tighten. Not long enough for certainty. I closed my eyes, counted slowly. When I opened them again, the reflection moved perfectly. Memory protects us in peculiar ways. Sometimes it edits, sometimes it delays. Sometimes it simply asks us to believe that nothing happened. I chose to believe it, at least for another hour, or perhaps another day. Time had begun borrowing pieces from itself. The hallway felt unfamiliar again, not because it had changed, because it had forgotten how I expected it to be. The runner seemed shorter, the staircase steeper, the ceiling lower. Every room retained its shape while quietly abandoning its proportions. The house was no longer moving around me. It was moving around the person who remembered it. Halfway to the stairs, I heard footsteps above me, slow, measured.
wood answering weight. One step, silence. Another, silence. I looked up, nothing. The sound continued, not approaching, not leaving, simply existing. Like rain beyond closed windows. I called out, "Hello?" The word dissolved before reaching the ceiling. No echo, no reply, only another step. Then another, then none. I remained where I was, listening, waiting for fear. It didn't arrive. Fear belongs to certainty. What I felt had no name. Only a quiet awareness that something had begun behaving exactly as it always had, and that I was the only one who found it unusual. I climbed the stairs. I think. Sometimes I remember already being upstairs before deciding to go. That happened more often near the end. Intent and action slowly drifted apart. The small room waited with its door open. One chair. No, two. I smiled. Not because it amused me, because I had become tired of correcting myself. The room no longer required consistency, only attention. I stepped inside. The air felt strangely dense. Not difficult to breathe, difficult to disturb. As though every movement pushed gently against invisible water. The second chair faced mine. Empty. I knew someone had been sitting there. I also knew no one had. Both thoughts occupied my mind without arguing. There is a point where contradiction ceases to feel contradictory. The room teaches you that. I sat. The silence settled almost immediately. Not around me. Inside me. Thoughts that had been racing all afternoon slowed until they became impossible to separate. Memory. Expectation. Observation. Each borrowed the other's voice. I don't know how long I remained there. I only know what happened next because it had already happened before. Someone spoke. Not aloud, not inside my head. Somewhere between the two, you're still trying to arrange everything in a line. I answered before realizing I had heard anything. I don't know any other way. You did. The reply carried neither kindness nor cruelty, only certainty. Once, the room became colder. No, not colder, older. That is the closest word I have. Older. As though the air itself had existed longer than the rest of the house. My eyes drifted toward the window. The orchard remained perfectly still. Except, someone was standing beneath the apple tree. A woman. Too far away to distinguish her face. She wasn't looking at the house. She was looking toward the road, waiting for someone, for me. The thought arrived complete. I knew she was waiting for me. I also knew I had already seen her. Tomorrow. Yesterday. Neither word fit. I stood abruptly. The chair behind me scraped across the floor. The sound seemed impossibly loud. When I looked back, both chairs were empty. I frowned. Empty. Of course they were. Why had I expected anything else? My hand found the notebook still tucked beneath my arm. I don't remember bringing it upstairs. I opened it. Every page was filled not with paragraphs, with the same sentence over and over, hundreds of times. My handwriting, my ink, exactly the same pressure, exactly the same hesitation in every letter. You only think this is the first time. The words covered every page, no dates, no explanations, nothing else. My breathing became shallow. I turned another page. The sentence continued. Another. The same. Another. The same, until the final page. Only there had something changed. One additional line, smaller, almost squeezed into the margin. Next time, don't look in the mirror. I closed the notebook so quickly my fingers caught between the pages. Pain bloomed across my hand, fresh, sharp. The cut in my palm had opened again. Blood spread slowly across the cover. One drop, then another. As they fell onto the floorboards, a memory surfaced. No, not a memory. Recognition. I had done this before. Not once. Many times. Always the notebook. Always the blood. Always the room. The thought struck with such quiet certainty that I almost accepted it without question. This wasn't the first visit. It wasn't even the second. The house hadn't been waiting for me. It had been waiting for me to remember that I always came back. And then, for the first time since arriving, the clock downstairs struck. One clear note. Then another. Then another. I counted instinctively. 1, 2, 3, 10. The sound continued. 11, 12, 13. It did not stop. There was no pause between the hours, because there were no hours left to separate. The house wasn't telling the time. It was emptying it. When the final chime faded, I realized something so simple that it almost escaped me. I could no longer remember which version of me had entered the house. Only the one who would eventually leave, if she ever had. I had spent so much time trying to understand the house that I never considered the possibility that the house had never been the thing I needed to understand. The thought arrived quietly, almost disappointingly. After everything, the impossible memories, the pages written before I touched the pen, the moments that belonged to no particular place in time, I expected the final answer to feel enormous. A revelation, a door opening, a truth so powerful that everything before it would rearrange itself instantly. Instead, there was only a simple understanding. And simplicity, I discovered, can be more frightening than mystery. The room had never changed. I was the one who had been moving, not through the house, through myself. I sat in the chair near the window and looked at the empty space across from me. The second chair was gone. I did not hear it disappear. I did not see it fade. It was simply no longer there. A small wooden room, one chair, one window, one person. The world had become painfully ordinary, and somehow that was the strangest thing of all. For days, I had been searching for what was hidden. Now there was nothing hidden. No secret door. No presence waiting in the walls. No force pulling memories out of their places. Only a room where I had once sat as a child and tried to understand something I had no words for.
I closed my eyes, and for the first time, I remembered correctly, not perfectly, correctly. There is a difference. I remembered being small enough that my feet did not reach the floor when I sat in the chair. I remembered the afternoon light falling across the wooden boards. I remembered the sound of my grandmother moving somewhere downstairs. I remembered asking questions that children ask when they have not yet learned which questions are impossible. What happens to a moment after it is gone? Where does yesterday go? Can something happen if nobody remembers it? I remembered sitting across from another chair, empty, always empty. And yet I had never been alone. Not really. The second chair had never belonged to another person. It belonged to the part of me that I had left behind. The child who noticed things before she understood them. The child who knew that time was not a road, only a story people agreed to tell each other. Somewhere along the way, I had forgotten that. I had replaced wonder with certainty. And certainty is a very comfortable place to hide. My entire life, I had believed memory was something behind me, a collection of moments that had already finished happening. But memory was not a room full of old photographs. It was a doorway. And some doors do not lead backward. They lead inward. The notebook, the sentences, the warnings. They had not been written by someone else, not by a ghost, not by another version of me trapped somewhere outside time. They were written by me, not the me who was sitting there, not the me who had arrived at the house. All of them, the child, the woman, the person I would become, the person I had already been. Every version of me had been trying to leave something behind for the others. Not instructions, not warnings. A reminder, do not forget yourself. That was the only message. The only thing that had ever mattered. I thought about the clock downstairs. 4:10. For years I had believed it was broken. But perhaps it had been the only thing in the house that was honest. It had never promised to move. It had never pretended that time was something simple. A clock does not create time. It only measures the agreement humans made about it. 4:10 was not a mistake. It was just a moment. A single moment that refused to disappear. And perhaps we are all doing the same thing, carrying moments inside us, returning to them, living in them, leaving them, coming back. I opened my eyes. The room was exactly as it had always been. The walls, the floor, the window, the orchard outside. No distortion. No impossible shadows, no whispers, no hidden meaning. The greatest mystery was that there was no mystery left. I stood slowly. My hand rested against the doorframe. For a moment I expected something. A final sign, a confirmation, a reason why all of this had happened. Nothing came.
And strangely, I was grateful. Because perhaps not everything needs an explanation to be real. Some things happen only once. Some things happen every day. Some things happen only when we finally stop trying to prove that they happened. I walked downstairs. The hallway was quiet. The clock stood beside the staircase. I looked at it. 4:10. I smiled. Not because I understood it, because I no longer needed to. I reached the front door. The key turned easily, the same way it had when I arrived. The house did not hold me. It never had. I stepped outside. The air was colder than before. The garden looked smaller. The road looked closer. The world had returned to its ordinary size. Behind me stood an old house waiting for someone else to remember it. Or perhaps waiting for nobody at all. I never found out.
Years later, when I tried to describe that place, I always struggled. People asked me what happened there. I never knew how to answer, because the truth was both too complicated and too simple. Nothing happened. Not in the way people mean when they ask that question. No ghost appeared. No impossible creature revealed itself. No hidden truth waited beneath the floorboards. Nothing happened. And yet, I left carrying something I had spent my entire life missing. Not an answer, not a memory, something quieter, a feeling that I had finally stopped running from myself. The last thing I remember from that house is the clock. Not the sound of it, the silence after. The moment when the pendulum stopped moving. The moment when the room became completely still. I had expected the silence to feel empty. It didn't. It felt complete. Like the end of a sentence that did not need another word. Like a question finally accepting that it had no answer. Like time itself, after all its wandering, had finally found somewhere to rest. And then, nothing happened. And for the first time in my life, nothing was enough.